What a bullet! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. Here's Sir Rory now. On the outside, decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Sir Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Knocks it quickly, finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell, saved by the keeper.
Burnley won it to the end. That is magnificent. They deserve that.
Only by Paul Teller, off for a hat-trick.
He's got it. Hat-trick for Nathan Teller. Oh, he's on fire at the minute. 3-0 Burnley. It's Nathan Teller's day.
And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby. Here's Benson, can he go on the outside? Comes inside, top shot.
Oh, the goal. Manuel Benson once more. That is top class.
Burnley have done it. Fantastic. Clarets deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome along to the latest episode of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of our game on Monday night against Nottingham Forest at the City Ground in the Premier League. Finally, the Premier League is back. It feels like ages. It always does, doesn't it? I know it's only 1 week without football. Obviously, it's a 2-week gap. And this time, we're not playing until Monday. So it feels even worse. It still feels like ages away since we're playing. And I'm recording this on Thursday night. So I guess technically it's still ages away. It's just mad. It's just mad. It's infuriating. But I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Thomas from the Nottingham Forest 1865 podcast. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, really good. Thank you, mate. Just before we get started, obviously, I just want to quickly mention to everybody, obviously, the long-time listeners of the podcast will be aware, but we're pleased to announce that this season Turfcast will be sponsored by Green King Sports, where football is more than a game. Green King Sport venues are showing every single televised Burnley fixture over the 23-24 season, and that, of course, means the Monday night one. There was some confusion, actually, on the Burnley hashtag, Twitter Clarets, that this game wasn't on, because I think originally it wasn't supposed to be on due to some cricket or something, and that's why it was moved to Monday, but it has now been picked up. It is now on TV. It will be shown on Monday night. So Green King Sports pubs are showing this game, with more than 900 sports pubs across the UK. It doesn't matter if you're based in Burnley or Brighton, you can watch every single minute of the action. Keep an eye out during the season for events, offers, content and competitions that put you closer to the action. I'm pleased to say as well that these offers will be coming up soon. You'll hear some offers soon coming from Green King for our fans and for away fans, anyone who listens to the podcast. More on that as we get it. Anyway, let's get into the pre-game show. Thomas, obviously a good start for you guys this season. Obviously last time out beating Chelsea at Chelsea. Very unlucky at Manchester United, raced into a 2-goal lead, and if it wasn't, if VAR, I won't get into it, obviously, but very unlucky. Beat Sheffield United at home, probably expect to be beating them, but losing to Forest away on the opening day, again, probably expected that as well there. So what are your thoughts on the start to the season that you've had so far?
Pretty good. When the fixtures come out June time, I was bricking it a bit, thinking, God, that's a tough start, because our away record last year was pretty abysmal. We only got, I think it was 8 points on the road, and 1 win came against Southampton, who were pretty awful last season. So, yeah, I was fearing the worst, but first game of the season against Arsenal, they raced into a 2-0 lead, and you think, oh, here we go again. Then we gave a good account for ourselves in the second half and got an equaliser, and I think they were thinking, let's show it up a bit, because I think they took one of the attackers off and brought Gabriel on. So it was unlucky against Arsenal. Then we played Man U, and like I said on our podcast after the game, you've got to have everything aligned at Old Trafford and more to get anything out of the game. And was really good first half. Then just things didn't go in our favour. Second half, then beat Sheffield United in between those 2 games, which I think they're going to be one of the teams fighting relegation. Then we played Chelsea, which I think Chelsea could be still playing now and wouldn't have scored. I mean, they had all the ball, but the amount of chances they squandered, and we got like a goal through Alanga just after half time. And we've started the season really well. I mean, in pre-season we had a couple of iffy results, and we're probably fearing the worst that what might happen. But I think I knew we had to do it last season in terms of all the signings and everything, but I think there's been a bit of precision with these signings of identifying what we need and who we need, etc. And we're going to the game on Monday. I mean, the Premier League is a really hardest league in the world, isn't it? So, but I think we're like quietly confident on Monday without getting to above a station.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, hopefully, we've had a poor start, so I can understand why you would think that. But obviously, we are looking at this game, not necessarily thinking, yeah, we can win, but thinking, right, this is more going to be a test of where we are, because it's difficult for us as fans and for anyone really to gauge where we're at the minute, because we played Man City, Villa, and who else? Tottenham. Blocked that game out of my mind. 5-2, ridiculous. So this one's more of our level. So we'll see. Hopefully, at the bare minimum, we put up a decent fight and we don't get carved open like we did in the last three. But you mentioned there, obviously, quietly confident and stuff. Before the start of the season, I had Forest as one of the teams that we should be aiming to be finishing above. Like, not finishing above in that sense that we should be, but if we finish above Forest, then we're going to stay up, sort of thing. So, like, we can aim to finish in and around this team and then hopefully finish above them. But you've had some decent performances, like you said, beating Chelsea, unlucky at Manchester United, and a win against Sheffield United. Have your expectations changed now? Then I think at the start of the season you probably would have took staying up, whereas now are you thinking maybe push on to mid-table?
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to the teams who have come up. Like yourself, Sheffield United and Luton, because we was basically at that point last season, and we had a few iffy games at the start of the season. You think, Christ, where's the next few points going to come from? And we was like fearing at one point that we won't get above the 11 points what Derby set in the 07-08 season. So I can kind of like appreciate where you're at as a football club. So, having seen like Luton, which, no disrespect to them, I don't think they're good enough, and they've had an unbelievable going like to non-league and coming up the leagues and getting to the Premier League. It's an unbelievable achievement from a club who's probably really punching above the weight in terms of where they are. So I'd say survival at the start of the season, yes, that would have been the target, but having seen what's in the league and who we've played this season, and not really, we've gone there fearing them kind of thing, and then it's turned out we've had a few decent results in it, etc. I'd say if anywhere between 14th and 12th, that'd be steady progression this season, but we'll just see what happens, because you can kind of have like targets, and sometimes you might have like a run of results and you're back into the relegation mix. So, but yeah, at the start of the season, I would have said survival, but looking at it now, I'd probably say like mid-table, around about 12th to 14th.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, it's a great what a couple of wins can do for your confidence, isn't it? Especially with somewhere like Chelsea. So, no qualms of you predicting something like that. I remember last time we won at Chelsea, we ended up finishing 7th that season. So, it just shows what can be done if you get some good results and a good start as well, because 2 wins already. I'd bite your hand off for that right now in the position that we're in. Admittedly, played 1 game less, but we've obviously already played this season in the League Cup, and Burnley coming out winners with a late goal from Zeki Amdouni. But both sides did play weakened teams. I'm not sure how weakened yours will be to the normal one, but do you think that game would be a fair reflection as to where you are, or do you think because you played the majority of your fringe players, it'd be unfair to look at that game?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was some like first team players in there. Then we played Chris Wood, who's he had a bit of a slow start, but he's had a really good pre-season, got himself fit, scored the winner with United. So he started the game, and Alanga played it. It was just one of those games where like nothing really happened in the game until like the last minute or so when you nicked it with a 1-0 win. So I don't think you can really like base too much on that game of what's going to happen on Monday, because I think we're going to play a couple at least of the new signings who were made on deadline day, and no doubt Awani will start, who he come on against Burnley in the cup, and Gibbs White was the same, etc. We've lost Johnson, who's signed for Chelsea. Signed for Tottenham on deadline day. So yeah, we're a lot stronger this side of the transfer window than one was before it. So I think it's going to be a completely different game on Monday against you.
Yeah, fair enough. That's understandable. I were going to ask you about that actually, so I'm glad you brought it up. Obviously, Brennan Johnson leaving. I'll be honest with you, like I've got nothing against Forest at all, but obviously when you're in a position where you're probably going to be fighting relegation, I think some Burnley fans will start accepting that now. Those of us, including me, that were potentially looking a little bit higher at the start of the season. But when you saw Johnson, I remember thinking that's a team that could be down there getting weaker. But obviously, you're saying now you think you're stronger. You said off air just a minute ago it's probably one of the strongest sides you've seen since the mid-90s for Forest. What makes you stronger now? Because obviously he was very good, wasn't he, Johnson? Obviously that's why he's got the move to Tottenham. Scored a lot of goals last season. So who is it that you brought in? Have you just used that money to fill some gaps in other areas? Is that why you've got stronger?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we needed to, because a few of the loan players went back. Henderson went back to Man United, then he signed for Palace. Navas went back to PSG. Renan Lodi, he initially went back to Atletico Madrid because he was on loan, and he signed for Olympique Marseille. So we needed to fill some gaps there. So it was a bit of a slow window to start with. We got Olaina, who was on a free contract from Torino, who's had spells at Chelsea and Fulham. We got him in, and we got Matt Turner in the goalkeeper because we didn't have a decent goalkeeper, let's say. And then we got Anthony Elanga in from Man United. So, but at the start of the season, there were still gaps what we needed to fill. So with Johnson going, because we spent a lot last summer and in January, so we're probably close to FFP. But with Johnson going, I think it's the deal all in all is 50 million. So that will, because it's from the academy, it's pure profit, so it looks good on your FFP sheets. So we could go out and spend again. So we've got Ibrahim Sangar, who a lot of the big clubs were like sniffing around during the summer, like Bayern Munich. We managed to get him from PSV for 30 million. We've got Gabriel Montiel in from Sevilla, who scored the winning penalty for Argentina in the last World Cup. We've got Nicolas Dominguez, which was a straight swap for Remo Friul, who's gone back to Bologna. So he's back in Serie A now. And then we've got Callum Hudson-Odoi. So there's quite a few players who we've used the money and we've filled the gap. So the strength in depth's pretty decent now. We've got Divock Origi on loan for the season, and we've got Vasilis Okademus, who's the Greek number one. So we've got two top goalkeepers in now. So it's just a matter of like strength in depth, because at the start of last season, you look at the bench and when things weren't going well for us, we just didn't have the strength in depth, and now we have. I mean, against Chelsea, we had the likes of Felipe on the bench, who used to play for Atletico Madrid, and Moussa Niakhaté, probably like our first pick at centre half, and Chris Wood, etc. So we have got the strength in depth now, which is needed in the Premier League if you want to stay in the Premier League, and then obviously keep yourselves away from the relegation zone.
Yeah, fair enough. I do want to mention last season, so I'm glad you mentioned it in passing there. Obviously, ended up staying up, obviously, because we're playing this weekend. But it was a slow start, wasn't it? There was a lot of, I think you said earlier in the podcast or off air that you were panicking after the start of the season that you had. Some Burnley fans probably in a similar position now. Look, judging by the games coming up, because after you, we've got to play Chelsea, Manchester United, and Newcastle United with a Luton game in there, that we could well be at the end of that run now with 1 point, for example. So we're going to be in a similar position, if not worse, than what you were last season. What got you out of it? What got you out of it? Was it just sticking by Cooper? Because there was a lot of talk about Cooper getting sacked, and obviously he wasn't. Not that I think we'll sack Company, especially with the money that we've spent this summer. What got you out of it? Did you just click? Did Company just change things? Sorry, not Company. Cooper. Did you just change things slightly?
So how Burnley are playing at the moment very much reminds me of us last season at the start. So you blitz the championship. We basically blitz the championship from like, I'll probably say the November till the end of the season. We just got on a run and everything. And you think that you can have that philosophy and that mentality of going into the Premier League and sticking to your principles. And you try and do that, but then you get hurt because of the quality. I mean, you can make the odd mistake in the Championship and not get punished. Make a mistake in the Premier League and you're done for. And there was a few games last season where the first goal went in, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. And it was like a rabbits in headlight moment. So Cooper changed his ideals, if you know what I mean. Is the mentality, and we're gone a bit more resolute and like 11 men behind the ball and just stuck at it. And deep down, I don't think he wanted to play like that, but it was a case of playing like that just to stay in the Premier League. And now home form was a factor that got us through, plus the atmosphere of the City ground and away from home, even though away from home and weren't great, but the fan power at the City ground was phenomenal. It's like a lot of the pundits and the media were saying the atmosphere at the City grounds probably one of the, well, if not the best Premier League last year. So yes, just sticking together and everything. There was a few occasions last season where Steve Cooper was really on the brink, especially against we played Leicester at the start of the season and we lost 4-0. And I mean, it's not a local derby, but it is geographically. Obviously, our derby is against Derby, but the thing is, though, they're a few divisions away from us at the moment, and to lose that wasn't nice. Then later in the season, we played Leeds at Elland Road and was awful, and I thought that was the night that we was going to go down because we was awful in the game, lost 2-1, and I thought Cooper was going to go then, but the ownership had a statement that says things have got to improve, and thankfully,
I remember that.
Yeah, just the whole club was just galvanised, and like you got Steve Cooper and everything, and the affinity what he has on the fans in the city is like that's got him through. And now the club have backed him again. Then I think it's just going to be steady progression now and see where it takes us.
Do you think you can get to that next level with Cooper, or do you think you would need to get somebody else in? And by that next level, I mean sustaining yourself as a top half club, or maybe even pushing for Europe.
The thing is with Cooper, he is an unbelievable coach, and he's proven that on the international stage with the England under 17s with when they had the likes of Phil Foden there and Morgan Gibbs-White, etc. So he can coach real high-profile players in terms of ability and everything. So, and he is a fantastic coach and he is adaptable. So, at the moment, I'm going to say yes, because with that better player and that better personnel at his disposal, he's only going to excel as a coach. So, and I think anybody in any walk of life, if you've got the tools to do the job and you are a talented coach or whatever, then you are going to excel. So at the moment, I'm going to say yes, he will excel and trying to get Forest into that like next batch of teams in terms of being like a decent mid-table side, like a Palace, for example.
No, fair enough. I always find it interesting because I know a lot of teams want to get to the next level and then they'll end up thinking, well, this manager isn't the manager to get us there. So it's good to see that the fans do think he can get you there. I just want to go back as well briefly because you mentioned the way that Burnley playing at the minute, and then Cooper changed it even though he didn't really want to. I feel like we're in that moment right now with Vincent. I think we've come up, like you said, we've played this free-flowing attacking football. And we've just been cut open in the Prem doing it. And there's been quite a lot of sort of like talking points, like, for example, his refusal to play an actual left-back at left-back, dropping Ari Netmioric, who were fantastic last season for us with James Trafford, who did very well, you know, in League One with Bolton and with the England 21s winning the Euros or the World Cup, whatever it was. I think it was the Euros, wasn't it? But he's come in and he's looked a little bit sort of like, just quite not ready yet. So it'd be interesting to see if he does change his philosophy a little bit and change things up a little bit. But Cooper's a good case study for that to say that it could work, Cooper and Forest. But I do like to get other fans' opinions on Burnley as well. So, and you kind of mentioned it already, like you feel like we might need to change the way we play a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the starts of the Premier League that we've had? Because obviously it's been difficult. And do you think that we're good enough to get out of it, or do you think we're going to struggle?
I think because I've got a mate who's a Man City fan, and so when Vincent Kompany, he's a very intelligent footballing man.
Yeah, he is.
So I think it's all down to Vincent Kompany. If he's willing to adapt, then you'd be fine. But if he's going to be a bit stubborn and stick to his principles, you might have a problem with that. Because, like you said, you're not playing a left back at left back. We had an example last season where there's a couple of games where he tried to integrate Jesse Lingard, Morgan Gibbs-White, and Brennan Johnson, who all three of them are not an out-and-out striker, and it ultimately did in games, and we just got picked apart. And we had quite a bit of the ball in certain matches in certain periods, but then we didn't have that killer instinct to score a goal, for example. So yeah, if he's willing to adapt, you'd be fine, because I do think he is a talented footballing personnel at Burnley, but it all depends with Vincent Kompany. But I wouldn't press the panic button just yet, but I'd say give it a month, and if the same things, the thing what you don't want to happen is be cut adrift.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think I know you've only got a point, but the teams are in and around you have like got 3 points, 4 points, so one win it will get you there, kind of thing. Because there was a lot of games. Well, there's a lot of times last season where we didn't win for a lot of games, and you just don't want to be cut adrift. And just before we wrapped up for the World Cup, we played Palace and beat them 1-0, and it just got us out of the relegation zone. So psychologically, it just gives you that like bit of confidence to come back to after the World Cup. And I think we played like the likes of Leeds and Leicester in quick succession, and played Southampton as well, and we managed to get through the 9 points out of those 3 games. So like says, just don't like be cut adrift, and you never know, one win might just take you out of it and just give you that bit of confidence. But I think he's just got to be adaptable in the Premier League. And I know if he's got principles and he wants to stick by the principles, that's all well and good. But for the good of Burnley to stay in the Premier League, he might have to adapt a bit like we did last season.
Yeah, that's my worry, to be honest, getting cut adrift. Because, like I said, we've got Forest, but it's away. You've just beaten Chelsea. So, say, for example, if you win that 1-0, no one's going to bat an eyelid at that. Then we've got the likes of Man United, Chelsea, Newcastle, and Luton, all within the next 4 games. So we could easily be cut adrift this time in another 4 or 5 games. And last time we were in the Premier League and we got relegated because we got off to a slow start and we got cut adrift, and we're playing catch up. When you're playing catch up, there's more pressure. When there's more pressure, you make mistakes. People like James Tarkowski and Ben Mee, who very rarely make mistakes, are making stupid mistakes. And that's why we ended up not really getting out of it and getting dragged into it. So it was tough. So fingers crossed we can get out of it.
Yeah, I think you can't put too much emphasis on games against like the likes of Man City, Man United, Liverpool, etc. I think if you can get anything at home, it's a massive bonus. I mean, last season we beat Liverpool, we got a 1-1 against Chelsea at home, beat Arsenal, and then the teams in and around us were picked up points against. So I think that's key. And I think going away from home, I mean, we was pretty awful last season on the road, but so yeah, I think your home form's going to be massive if you want to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said earlier or off air, I can't remember. It's difficult to gauge where we're at the minute. And as I said, in if you haven't seen it yet, head over to the BBC Sport website. You can see my weekly article on there. But I said it this week, like I'm not panicking just yet. It's difficult to gauge where we're at because we haven't played. We've played, in my opinion, 3 of the end of the season's top 6. It would have been good to have had that Luton game in there and then maybe beat them. If we'd have lost lost against them, things would have looked even bleaker. But for example, if we'd have won there, we'd be sat here now on 3 points. Nobody's panicking. Nobody's worrying. So, it's hard to gauge where we're at the minute. We need a run of games, which we don't have until November, against teams that aren't in the top 6.
Yeah, and so I think we've you're in another thing is, you've signed a lot of players like us last season.
Yeah.
I mean, the media had an absolute field day, and I think I'm not sounding bitter or anything, but I know because Vincent Kompany is like quite well known in the media because of obviously Man City. He's probably had a bit of a reprieve because we signed no end of players last season, just like give you that strength in depth kind of thing. And Talksport and etc. are going to go to saying, "Oh, Forest is signing another player, etc., etc." And that was like the monkey on the shoulders all season, saying, "Oh, Forest have like signed 30 players and this, that, and the other." So I think that's another factor with yourselves that you've got players need to adapt to Vincent Kompany's way of playing.
Yeah, definitely.
Still probably back end of the season where things started to settle down and the team basically picked itself. So I think that's another factor in trying to stay in the league. You need things just to settle down a bit and players to adapt and settle into the way of how Vincent Kompany wants to play.
Yeah, completely agree. It took a while last season for the new players that we brought in last season, because last season we had an even bigger turnover of players. It took a while, even then in the Championship, but you don't get that luxury in the Prem. If you have a slow start, like you said, we both said it, we can be caught adrift. Anyway, let's chat about the actual match. We've learnt enough about Forest now. We've learnt enough about your opinion on Burnley, which is always good to get. But what sort of game were you expecting? Not necessarily what score, but what sort of game are you expecting? Because, of course, we already mentioned the League Cup game. We said like nothing much really happened. I remember watching that thinking that Burnley did well in the midfield in terms of controlling the possession, but never really did too much with it until the 85th minute or whatever it was when we scored. But I think this time it's going to be a bit different. Obviously, you'll come at us, I think, a bit more. You'll be expected to control the game yourselves, being at home and playing your starting 11. So what sort of game are you expecting?
I'm expecting us to dominate, and I think it'd be quite a quick start from us looking to get a quick goal in the first 10 minutes or so. If it doesn't happen, I think we've just got to get behind the Forest and actually not panic too much. But what I noticed in games against Burnley, well, the games what you played this season, is that you're willing to commit a lot of players forward.
Yeah.
And I think we're playing to our hands, because if you lose the ball high up the field, and you've got the likes of Taro Owanyi, Gibbs White, and Langer if he plays, or Hudson-Odoi, whichever, then we've got pace in abundance to hurt you. So we'll probably look to recycle the ball and get back to the other end of the pitch quite quick and probably do on the counter. So I think that's going to be key for us.
That's essentially what Spurs did to us, to be fair.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, it depends what Vincent Kompany does, because I watched the highlights of that Spurs game and I thought, well, if we play like that, we've got a chance. But all depends if what mentality Vincent Kompany is going to have going into the game. Is he going to be a bit more like resolute and not commit too many plays forward, or is he going to stick to how he's going to play as he has at the start of this season? So he's going to commit players forward and etc. So yeah, I think that's an area where we can get at you. But like I said, we've just got to be quite resolute, because you have got players who can hurt us, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we do throw players forward with the thought process of winning the ball in the final third. We've won the ball more in the final third, I think, than the majority of teams in the Premier this season. Done us a fat lot of good, admittedly, but that's why we do it. But worth remembering, this is our first away game of the season in the league, so it's interesting to see if companies are going to set up different, because it's an away game, first away game in the Premier League this season. So that'll be a factor. What sort of players should we be looking out for then? I know you mentioned a couple there, but who do you think is going to hurt us the most if someone's going to hurt us?
Gibbs White with his creativity. Taro Owanyi, he's been on fire since last season. I think he's, apart from the game against Chelsea, I think he's scored about 8. Has he scored 8 or 9 in 10? So yeah, he scored against Arsenal, scored against Palace, scored 2 against 1 against Sheffield United. Then he scored 2 against Southampton back end of last season. So he's carried that form in, and he was a bit of a quite raw at the start of last season, but they've really worked with him, his finishing and his all-round game, and he is a top striker. So he's one player who I'll be probably pinning my hopes on to hurting Burnley on Monday. Anthony Elanga, who's like he's coming to the side from Man U, and he's been brilliant this season. He's scored one, he's had a couple of assists, etc. Then Gibbs White, who's pretty good. So I'd say them three are the players what can hurt you the most. Then obviously, I think it's a case of in the middle of midfield who actually plays, because Aurel Mangala, who plays for Belgium, he's had a decent start to the season, and then Angara might make his debut against Burnley on Monday, and we just signed the Argentinian Nicolas Dominguez from Bologna. So yeah, depends what he's going to set up in midfield really. But I'd say if I need to name three players who are going to hurt Burnley, I think it's going to be Anthony Elanga, Taiwo Awoniyi, and Morgan Gibbs-White.
Yeah, fair enough. Finally, score predictions. It's fair to say you sound pretty confident, but what's your actual score prediction?
Well, with Forest, I don't want to sound that I'm getting too above my station and being too overly confident, because we know how football works. It bites you on the arse, doesn't it? Because that's where my confidence is coming from. If it was at Turf Moor, I wouldn't be as confident. So I am going to go for I'm going to say 2-0 win to Forest.
Fair enough. I'm going to go 1-1. I'm just hoping that, we've been poor this season, if I'm honest. There's not much to shout about so far this season, apart from maybe Lyle Foster and Coley Oshaw. Going forward, have looked okay. Defensively, we haven't. And your pace does worry me a little bit. But I'm going to go 1-1. I'm hoping that company's going to look at the first three games, think, I've done this wrong, I've done that wrong, I've done this wrong, change it slightly, not commit as many bodies forward, try and hold off a little bit, maybe just not dash ball. Obviously, we don't want to go back to that. But just sit back, relax, try and control the game in the middle, and just don't let you get at us in the way that I know you're going to try to do in the first 10, 15 minutes. Just try and take the sting out of it, get past that, and then hopefully kick on from there.
Yeah, I think from a Burnley perspective, it's one of those games where just don't lose. And just try and get out the game, just like get your first point on the board and then use it as like a springboard kind of thing. Like I says, I am confident, but I've just got this fear that two things might happen in the game where you'll just sit back and we haven't got a clue how to break you down, or it's just going to be one of those games where we're going to be probably a bit complacent and you like do is 2-0. That's the two things I think. And
we won't sit back. I'll be very surprised if we sit back. I think if we're going to try and control the game, we'll probably try and do it in the middle, get us foot on the ball, do it that way. It's not in this new Burnley to sit back. It's not Sean Dyche anymore. I've said Sean Dyche in a negative way twice in the past 30 seconds. I love the man just before anyone gives me some shit. But it's a completely different style of play. Maybe the complacency might creep in because of the start that we've had. I think a lot of the complacency, if you do get complacent, your players, for example, wouldn't necessarily be because of the start you had as well as it has been. I think a lot of people have now looked at Burnley and gone, actually, they're pretty poor. Maybe we can get at these. We're not as poor as the results have made out. We've just had a tough start, thanks to the teams that we've played, but we've made mistakes in these teams as well, and so has Vincent Kompany in the system. So it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be a tough one for us, I think.
I haven't seen you this season, and I've seen other Premier League games. I think you're better than Everton. I think Everton are very, very
Everton,
poor.
Wolves, Sheffield United, Luton.
Yeah.
So there's some. I said it at the start of the season, and I now think some people will include us in this category. But there's some poor teams in this championship, in this Premier League this season, and Everton are one of them. I do worry for Everton this year.
Yeah, I mean, last season when we come in, you're thinking, well, who's worse than us? And I think it was the first time in a long while that all the promoted side stayed up. Unfortunately, Leicester had an absolute tailspin of a season. Leeds were awful, and Southampton were consistently bad. And all changed managers all the way through the season. And look what happened. So, like I said, if I can see a lot of similarities between us and yourself from last season in terms of coming into the league and everything. But yeah, if you stick with Company, and if he's like not too naive and willing to adapt, you will stay in this division. But it's just a matter of like certain things aligning for that to happen. But going back to Everton, because there was a point last season where Steve Cooper's name, he was on the verge of probably getting sacked, as we've mentioned, and before he got the Everton job, Sean Dyche was rumoured of getting the Forest job.
He went to a few Forest games as well, didn't
he? Yeah, because he actually still lives in Nottingham with Ian Woan and eventually Steve Stone, who was at Forest as well. And but looking at Everton last season, I thought they were awful, and his football won't suit us. I thought they were like quite robust and they're quite cynical as well, and they just like play for a lot of free kicks and things like that. And yeah, I think you're a lot better than Everton, even though you haven't got a point on the board yet. So
yeah, fingers crossed. I do still think we'll survive. If I'm honest, I do still think we stay up.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure, like we said earlier, we don't get cut adrift. And now's the time to start getting points. Get a point against you, and hopefully win against Luton. Maybe nick a surprise win against Man United, because they're not what they used to be, as everyone knows. But fingers crossed. Final one from me, mate, and then we're done. Just want to let everyone know where they can find your podcast and your content if they want to watch or listen.
Yeah, so we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's the 1865 Nottingham Forest podcast.
Yeah, happy days. Well, thank you for coming on, Thomas. It's been a pleasure. Good luck for the season. Good luck for the season. I'm not going to crack the usual joke that everyone says, but not on Monday. I'm past that now. Good luck for the season, mate. I think Forest will be fine, though.
Yeah, and I think you just need to stick with Company and you'll be fine.
I'm sure we will, mate. I'm sure we will. But thanks for calling, mate. It's been a pleasure.
No problem.